Europe, historically, has been mainly a geographic term denoting the huge western peninsula of Eurasia. For the West in the Cold War, it frequently implies only those countries west of the Iron Curtain, free Europe. But in recent years, the term Europe has connoted more. Now it also refers to the goal of a united community, integrating the nations of that area, which, if achieved, would make free Europe the third most important power in world affairs. To make Europe has been the object of persevering campaigners among the leaders of the area. It is also a basic goal of American policy. Yet it defies Europe's almost endless diversities and poses a deeply controversial long-term problem. In recent years, free Europe has enjoyed an unprecedented degree of harmony in diplomatic relations among virtually all its members, and its economic position has never been stronger. But even under the glow of good relations and good times, free Europeans have an uneasy remembrance of catastrophes which threaten their extinction and which could recur in new and more terrifying forms. Furthermore, they are painfully aware of their loss of world leadership and, above all, of their exposed position in the atomic age. Free Europe's deep concern for its external and internal security provides a powerful motivation for steps toward unity. Free Europeans know they must produce ever more efficiently in order to be assured of both economic security and political stability. Thus, they are generally more conscious than ever before of their need for closer ties and better integrated efforts, though they are far from agreed on the best methods or the best pace for achieving this goal. On the other hand, efforts to unite Europe by peaceful means have gained favor in this century. In the past, the occasional proponents were visionaries, such as the Duc du Sully in the 16th century. William Penn in the 18th. And Victor Hugo in the 19th. Coudenhove-Kalergi carries on this tradition in the 20th century. Only after World War I did the weight of economic and military problems stimulate key statesmen such as Édouard Herriot and Aristide Briand of France to push hard for a unified Europe. A worldwide depression and the rise to power of Adolf Hitler destroyed these efforts, bringing war again to Europe. But the devastating effects of World War II created the necessary support among the thinkers and politicians. Now, at last, their first effective steps toward unification were taken. Leaders who lent their enthusiasm and prestige to dozens of promotional organizations with broad followings included Winston Churchill, Robert Schuman of France, Paul-Henri Spaak of Belgium, Alcide de Gasperi of Italy, Joseph Besch of Luxembourg, Konrad Adenauer of West Germany. An umbrella-type organization, the European movement measures all the private groups. The parliamentarians of Europe who are promoting integration concert their actions through the European Parliamentary Union. During the years following World War II, critical steps were taken by the governments toward the integration of free Europe. These steps, though largely uncoordinated, represented more solid progress toward unity than Europe had made for 2,000 years. The three Benelux countries led the way with the formal establishment of the Benelux Customs Union, effective January 1st, 1948. In 1958, the participants, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg, proclaimed a full economic union. The Benelux Union has thus eliminated almost all trade barriers and is close to realizing free movement for goods, services, capital, and persons. A second regional organization, also established in 1948, was the Western Union, or Brussels Pact, the first post-war military alliance formed in free Europe. Members of the Western Union were the United Kingdom, the Benelux countries, and France. This alliance between Britain and her closest neighbors, which was directed against a German military revival, was soon overshadowed by NATO. But it did serve as a forerunner of other European and Atlantic Community organizations, such as Western European Union, which later tied Britain into the arrangements for controlled German rearmament. In 1947, Europe's desperate reconstruction needs had prompted the Marshall Plan. This move, in turn, soon led to establishment of the Organization for European Economic Cooperation, OEEC, with the still broader goal of long-term economic growth. Considering that a strong and prosperous European economy is essential for the attainment of the purpose of the United Nations, the preservation of individual liberty, and the increase of general well-being, and that it will contribute to the maintenance of peace. Accordingly, the contracting parties hereby set up an organization for European economic cooperation. The OEEC was so successful as a cooperative device that after the Marshall Plan terminated, the organization was continued by unanimous desire. Present members of the OEEC, forming what is sometimes called Greater Europe, are Iceland, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Ireland, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, West Germany, France, Switzerland, Austria, Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Turkey. Since 1950, the OEEC has swung its attention to removal of trade barriers, increases in productivity, and support of national financial stability, all avenues to economic integration. Operating under the OEEC's authority is the European Payments Union, EPU, which boosts trade and facilitates payments between member nations. It uses foreign exchange surpluses earned by some members to ease credit for others with deficits. Meanwhile, this broad economic uplift through the OEEC was complemented in 1949 by the formation of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO. This organization, which was the first peacetime military alliance between the United States and its European partners, now has 15 members. They are Iceland, Norway, Denmark, the United Kingdom, Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, West Germany, France, Portugal, Italy, Greece, Turkey, United States, and Canada. Underlying NATO are common military, political, economic, and cultural interests among the free peoples of the North Atlantic area. Europe's freedom and strength are vital to America's own safety. If these nations were absorbed by the communist empire, there would be a shift in the balance of power, which would doom the Western way of life as we know it. Furthermore, the United States benefits from a close economic and scientific association with Europe. American industry and agriculture find some of their best markets in free Europe. Consequently, the United States has spent billions of dollars to restore and strengthen the national economies of free Europe, has contributed manpower as well as resources to a common defense system. Thus, NATO, with its headquarters in and near Paris, is the capstone of America's relationship to free Europe. Originally, NATO consisted of 12 members. The Korean War brought 2 new ones, Greece and Turkey. In 1955, West Germany became the 15th member, assuming a vital position in European defense and providing a powerful psychological assist. Today, NATO serves chiefly as a means for coordinating national and collective defense. An armed attack against one country will be considered an attack against all. In addition, NATO points the way toward an Atlantic community of non-military policies. Article 2 calls for a measure of political and economic integration by coordinated efforts to strengthen internal stability and eliminate conflicts of economic policies. In 1948, at the Congress of Europe in The Hague, a broad federation of Europe was among the plans discussed. Even before Europeans joined hands with Americans and Canadians in the larger Atlantic community, some European leaders had been considering the far more ambitious project of a political unification of Europe alone. One result was the organization of the Council of Europe in 1949. Its promoters sought to take in all of Greater Europe, but Switzerland clung to its strict neutrality, and Portugal would not join without Spain, which was ostracized by reason of its undemocratic regime and the bad blood created by the Civil War. The Council of Europe at Strasbourg aims to promote greater unity among the European countries in order to facilitate their economic and social progress. The Council lacks any real authority because most of the governments of Greater Europe are unprepared to make any actual concessions for a true federation of Europe. For many observers, it has long since lost real importance and is often disparaged by such terms as debating society. It has persevered, however, and has accomplished tangible results in such reforms as the simplification of visa requirements. It is the only official body representing most of free Europe, ready to serve as nucleus of a United States of Europe. Three years after creation of the Council of Europe came the longest stride to date toward a united Europe. Establishment of the European Coal and Steel Community, ECSC, with its headquarters in Luxembourg. The 3 Benelux countries, France, West Germany, and Italy, sometimes known as the Community of Six, or Little Europe, agreed to force a major breakthrough on unification without waiting for the rest of Greater Europe to go along, by establishing the first European authority above the national governments. The European Coal and Steel Community was proposed by French Foreign Minister Robert Schuman in June 1950. The staunchest supporters of European integration had been clamoring for a decisive step. Schuman, who knew Germany well and had even served in the German army in World War I, was convinced that a pooling of these key industries of France and Germany would be the surest means of healing the historic breach between the two countries. The outbreak of the Korean War gave impetus to the so-called Schuman Plan. The resulting treaty asserted, considering that world peace may be safeguarded only by creative efforts as great as the dangers menacing it, convinced that the contribution which an organized and vital Europe can bring to civilization is indispensable to the maintenance of peaceful relations, the nations resolved to substitute for historic rivalries a fusion of their essential interest, to establish the foundation of a broad and independent community. Birth of the ECSC was marked by creation of an assembly at Strasbourg, checking the executive in Luxembourg. Despite the initial hostility of the producers, clashes with national prerogatives, and the enormity in general of the task, the ECSC has firmly established itself as a going concern. In large part, the credit has been due to Jean Monnet, French promoter extraordinary, who was a principal architect of the treaty and became the first president of the High Authority, the executive body of the ECSC. In the first 5 years of operation, the crude steel output of the 6 member countries increased 50%, compared to a rise of 30% in their total industrial output. The Korean War produced an urgent drive to rearm Germany at any cost. Now the same community of 6 undertook to go much further and faster with a European Defense Community, EDC, and a European Political Community, EPC. These also were supranational, though abortive steps toward integrating Europe. EDC was given top priority as a means for quieting French fears of a militarized Germany. The goal was a European army which would preclude renewed German aggression. A selling point was that several phases of creating a united Europe would be compressed into one. Many French, however, were violently opposed to giving up their traditional defense system. Then, too, no great popular demand for rapid federation existed in Europe, and the move toward coexistence reduced the urgency of German rearmament. In 1954, the torpedoing of both EDC and EPC by French Premier Mendès France stunned the Community of 6 and the Western Alliance. Britain's Eden now seized the initiative. Promptly, a new approach to German rearmament was taken through a Western European Union, combining the United Kingdom with the Community of 6 under the London and Paris agreements. British participation in the control arrangements now reduced French apprehensions over German rearmament. Perhaps the chief benefit of the Western European Union was the special link it forged between the Community of 6 and the rest of Greater Europe. At Messina, Sicily, June 1955, the prime movers of European integration resumed their earlier moderate pace, along lines which were still supranational, but more practical. Community of 6 representatives resolved to work for broader economic integration and a pooling of atomic resources. At Rome, March 1957, the now historic treaties signaling agreement on these far-reaching steps were signed. The treaties established the Common Market, or European Economic Community, EEC, and the European Atomic Community, EURATOM. These projects were aimed at 2 of Europe's most critical needs: the harmonization of economic policies and the assurance of adequate industrial power for the future. Also, they advanced the unification of Europe, again in supranational steps, but with less concentration of power in the executive and more gradually over a 15-year period. The treaty provisions on EURAFRICA suggest almost limitless opportunities for expansion of Little Europe's economic potential. These seek a common development of the African territories of France, Belgium, and Italy, and may even be extended throughout their economic spheres of influence. Now, turning to some of the problems of making Europe, we go back to the geographic areas embraced by the present regional organizations. Smallest and oldest grouping is Benelux, with only about 2% of the area of free Europe, but almost 7% of its population. Benelux joins West Germany, France, and Italy in the community of 6, with over 50% of free Europe's population of almost 300 millions. This grouping, also known as Little Europe, is the core of any real federation in this area. This community of 6, in turn, joins the United Kingdom to form the Western European Union. While all of free Europe, except Finland, Spain, and Yugoslavia, are joined in the loose grouping known as Greater Europe. Most of this area joins the United States and Canada to form the Atlantic Community, embraced by NATO. Sweden, Austria, Switzerland, and Ireland are outside. Now, what are the fields of national activities which these communities aspire to integrate? The Benelux Union is intended as a true economic union of the entire economies of the 3 participating countries. The community of 6 is presently intent on integrating specialized economic activities, such as utilization of coal, steel, iron, and scrap, removal of barriers to movement of goods, people, and capital, and control of atomic energy. The Western European Union has a military mission primarily to control armaments, and secondarily to rationalize arms production. The OEEC and the Council of Europe are organizations for the discussion of general economic, social, and political policy. While NATO is primarily concerned with military defense, it is also concerned with the harmonization of economic and political policy. Finally, all these organizations possess distinctive types or degrees of power. Most are intergovernmental, following traditional international cooperation, with no sacrifice of national sovereignty. These promote integration indirectly at the working levels, improving understanding among both technicians and statesmen, aligning national policies, thus subtly integrating the minds and wills of the leaders before attempting to integrate the sovereignties of the several states. Only the Community of Six has thus far relinquished some sovereignty to supranational organizations, as our own states once delegated certain powers to our own federal union. The ECSC was the pace-setter as a supranational organization, wielding certain authority or power beyond direct national control. The participating countries, through their national parliaments, elect an assembly. This assembly has now been merged into a European Parliamentary Assembly, which also serves the EEC and EURATOM. The executive body, called the High Authority, controls prices, levies taxes, and issues certain regulations binding on the individual private enterprises. It has considerable discretionary authority and is the supranational heartbeat of the ECSC. Under orders of the 6 national governments is the Council of Ministers, which seeks to harmonize the actions of the High Authority with national policies, and in certain matters empowers the High Authority to act. The Consultative Committee, representing producers, workers, and consumers, advises the High Authority. The European Court of Justice hears appeals on actions by the High Authority and has power to nullify or approve its actions. The court, as well as the High Authority, is appointed by the governments. Despite the gratifying progress already made toward unifying free Europe, there remain powerful forces ever ready to slow the pace, even to block certain paths. These may be national or international groupings motivated by political expediency. Special economic interests such as cartels, or traditional national prejudices. The opponents usually ignore the ultimate good to be gained by all through integration. The economic facts themselves, such as wide disparities in national resources and productivity levels, raise formidable hurdles. The supranational authorities are constantly in jeopardy as they clash in their routine activities with national agencies, still supreme in the unpooled sectors of the member countries' economies, particularly in matters of monetary and financial policy. In a serious deadlock, the supranational authorities would lack coercive power. Difficulties also arise out of disagreement among the promoters of integration, especially over the deepening division between Little Europe and the rest of Greater Europe. In an effort to bridge this growing gap, Britain and the Community of Six have discussed a broad free trade area to be linked with the common market. While such a scheme would not be supranational, it would be by far the longest stride to date in uniting Greater Europe. But the obstacles to a general freeing of trade throughout the area are deep-seated and stubborn. Many common market leaders, too, are wary of concessions to the rest of Greater Europe, which might slow their own integration pace. Yet the overall progress already made toward integrating free Europe is far beyond expectation. European institutions are functioning. European officials are exercising direct authority over the people of half the area. Popular acceptance of the new European order is growing, which alone offers this area hope of holding its own. As Monsieur Jean Monnet, now chairman of the Action Committee for a United States of Europe, says, I learned that public opinion must be mobilized to prepare the way for the governments. We have begun to make public opinion aware, for example, of the tremendous energy needs which Europe faces in the coming 20 years. Atomic power is the field in which a united Europe can do spectacularly more than can the separate countries. A strong and prosperous United States of Europe, delivered from fear, can powerfully contribute to the cohesion of the free world. Europe's nations, faced with the prospect of decline like the city-states of ancient Greece, have begun to make one of the century's greatest experiments in government, in their effort to break the restraints of the past. It may well be through this new kind of federalism that rejects nationalist excess that the 20th century will make one of its greatest contributions to succeeding generations.